Hey guys. Alright, so we are going to do a little screencasting for parts of Chapter 8 and probably 9 and even so on. These are not required for you to watch. You might find little extra credit points in some of them, but they are here for you in case you want to watch them, because I am not going to spend all of our class time going over every single piece of every chapter. It just, it's not fun for you. It's really not necessary. So I'm going to pick pieces to do screencasts with. So anyway, I'm going to get going because I'm trying to keep all of these under 15 minutes. You're going to have 2 for Chapter 8, and this first one may be a little bit shorter. So this is the beginning of Chapter 8. And here, look what I can do. Hi. Oh, there you go. All right. So now we're talking about in Chapters 8, 9, and 10, we are talking about 2 to 6-year-olds. And if we think about 2 to 6-year-olds, which we'll do this in class a little bit, how does their world expand? Our 0 to 2s had a very small little world that they worked inside of, and now they're adding on rooms to their house, and things are growing a little bit. So how does the world of a 2 to 6-year-old change? Think about what they do. Between those ages, they go on play dates. They begin little sports, usually gymnastics and soccer and swimming, and they go to the playground. They might start preschool, daycare, even kindergarten around 5. So their social world changes. They get into contact with more children and other people a lot more. So where they were with their caretakers so much in 0 to 2, and play dates were really for mom or dad, now it's for them. And they are becoming little social creatures. So it's expanding quite a bit. And there's a lot that they're learning inside of this little microcosmic world that they live in that is going to expand out into their world as they continue to grow. So one thing, Chapter 8 is very much about growth, physical growth for one. So we can see here, you know, babies are bobbleheads, toddlers are bobbleheads. They have big heads, little bodies. Now they become more proportional. And their center of gravity kind of moves from the breastbone down to the belly so that they're a little more, as I said, proportional. They become slimmer. But keep in mind, too, they're more physically active. So, you know, they're running, they're starting to, again, do those sports, play, They're going to be physical, so they're going to slim down. BMI at 5 or 6 can be the lowest of a lifetime. Age 2 to 6, well-nourished kids grow almost 3 inches and gain about 4.5 pounds annually. So they get to be about 40 to 50 pounds and 3.5 feet tall by the time they get to 6. Again, norms, averages, doesn't work that way for all kids. They're not growing as quickly as they did from 0 to 2. That's really the basic thing here. They're proportional, they're slimming down, but they are still growing, of course. And so they need far fewer calories per pound of body weight than infants did. But they tend to be, because, you know, in that infancy, there's a lot of architecture building, a lot of new stuff going on, and a lot of that brain building, and a lot, you know, and it's still happening, but not at the rates that it happens in infancy for that kind of calorie need. So they don't need it, but they tend to get enough calories. Some kids, and a lot of kids actually too many calories, but not necessarily enough nutrition. Because they can also, from 2 to 6, start saying no, and start refusing, and eating only what they want, and then we're toting them around, and convenience and quickness, and all of this stuff starts to happen. Maybe new kids are on the way, all of that kind of thing. So they get enough calories, but they don't get enough iron, zinc, and calcium, studies show. Lower appetite, more snack foods to just fill them up. Obesity is a bigger problem than malnutrition in this age. We tend to overfeed them. They're not getting underfed and malnourished. Especially in the studies show that in low-income families, you know, you think about it, though, because Whole Foods is expensive. It's cheaper, it's easier. If you have a family that mom's working 2 jobs, taking care of, one kid or many kids, needs things quick, needs things easy, needs things inexpensive. Well, unfortunately, the way it works in our society is that a lot of times the cheapest foods are not the healthiest, and they can be empty caloried, and rely on on fast food. Another interesting little phenomenon we can find is that if kids have grandparents who came from cultures where they experienced periods of kind of famine and then surplus, there wasn't always a lot to eat, so you ate when you could, that these grandparents can be very much about feeding the children, feeding the children. I see this in my own family with my father-in-law from the Philippines, and he was very poor growing up in the Philippines. And now I see it in him. When we are at their home, the number one thing that he's concerned about is that the children eat, eat, eat. Finish everything too, because you don't want to waste, and you want to make sure you eat enough, eat enough, eat enough. He doesn't overeat, but I could see him constantly trying to get the kids to eat. It's almost as if there's that epigenetic sort of entrained belief that at some point there's not going to be enough. Not that it's conscious, but an unconscious kind of belief. Overfeeding is causing an epidemic of illnesses that are later associated with obesity, like heart disease and diabetes. I mean, there is juvenile diabetes, but we can see it in kids when they become adults, this heart disease, for the habits that they take on as children. So the number one common disease, though, among these kids is tooth decay. Again, they're getting a lot of sugar, they're getting a lot of, that kind of stuff. And I think it's also because they're not great at brushing their teeth. I mean, I don't know how many of you, but 2 to 6-year-olds, they may have the 2-minute thing and they may do it, but it may be like, it's not really a great job. They're not flossing beautifully unless mom and dad are doing it. They want to do it by themselves. They don't do great there. And they're not necessarily getting all the sugar out when they put it in. Affects more than 1/3 of all kids under 6. So, they're growing. They're not growing as fast as they used to, but they are growing. They're more active. Overeating, not undereating in terms of nutrition, and certainly not getting everything they need. But, most kids do just fine, quite honestly. Most kids make it, but these are trends we're seeing that can be seen. So, I love this, hazards of just right. Just right is this phenomenon of children that are young. 3, 4, we see it. Under 6, it's very normal. It's a little like childhood OCD. I mean, it can look like that. It can be concerning for adults with just a little bit of information to see that I will only eat out of this plate or this cup. Everything has to be in a certain way, in a certain order. I'll only wear these clothes, only do things in a very particular way. We set, around eating, but you think about it. Children at this age, they've gotten some autonomy, hopefully. They're realizing that they have some control over their physical state. But they don't have a lot of control. They're still not allowed to do whatever they want, whenever they want. And so maybe this is a little bit about that, what we get into next, initiative, between autonomy and initiative. They want to hold some control in what they eat and how they eat it and how they dress. All of this, they're striving kind of mentally, cognitively for this like personhood. And at the same time, it's going to be limited, of course, and they don't necessarily want it completely. But as they attempt to get it, this is one area where it can show up. So it's always the question of, is this pathological later? It's a big question. We can talk about it in class if you guys want. I think that what we're seeing a lot of these days are sensory processing disorders, we kind of call them. A lot of kids who are, still at 10, 11, adults who don't like foods to touch, don't like, they like things in a certain way. OCD is a different phenomenon. It is something that it is a coping mechanism in many ways, to be able to control the outside, maybe as a feeling, a way of not being able to control the inside. I've actually had students that diagnosed with this say that feels right. I'm not trying to give the answers to anybody, but it becomes a coping mechanism for stress that then can be talked into the mind of being, has to happen in order to keep things in line and okay. That's different than these kids that are trying to just have some control over the things that they can when they're little. We usually see people outgrowing it by 7, 6, 7. So if it does continue, it's something to be watched, to just simply ask questions about. It could be the sensory processing that's we're seeing more and more, which shows up a lot in people on the spectrum, and that can be wide spectrum. It also shows up in gifted children. It also, don't like tags, don't like don't like the feel of certain things. Smells are very strong, and that can create a desire for things to be a certain way. So it really asks the question of, is it causing, is it limiting function? Is it limiting a life? And if it is, then it may be something worth asking questions about and getting resources on. So that's what I'll say about that, and we can certainly talk about that if you like. So we definitely see that kids are getting improved motor skills. We see from 2 to 6, of course, that's a wide variety. 2, they're just starting to kind of be able to run around a little bit, and then 6, they're riding tricycles, climbing ladders, doing swings, all kinds, playing soccer, maybe, swimming, using those things. And there's a lot that goes along with that. We're going to do brain development in class, but muscle growth, brain maturation, we're going to talk about myelination in class, practice, guided practice, advance every gross motor skill. So the more they use them, the better they get at it. That's just the way the learning works. It's the way the brain works. It's the way the body works. Use it, gain it. Don't use it, you lose it. Practice improves dexterity, advances fine motor skills. Those seem to come later than gross motor skills. They, much more precise. They come slower for boys, it seems, than girls. Not everywhere, not across the board. My son had very great fine motor skills. His gross motor skills he's still working on, but those came later. He walked at 17 months, and yet he could hold a pen correctly. So sociocultural theory believes very much that children learn gross motor skills best from peers. So then they're on the field, when they're doing the sports, when they're in groups, coloring together, or whatever. They see these things, they guide these things, they learn by watching, they take it in. So all of that, of course, is going. So that's going to be it for the beginning of Chapter 8. And then we're going to do brain development in class. Oh, shoot, I did want to do... Wait, okay. Brain development by age 2, the brain weighs 75% of it, and by 6, 90%. So it is growing faster than pretty much everything else. And because it's having to run everything, makes sense. The prefrontal cortex is maturing. It's not perfect. It doesn't stop maturing until the mid-20s, but it is maturing, which is helping a lot with some emotional regulation that we get to here. So as the emotions, children from 2 to 6, they don't only have emotions, they're beginning to use them in social situations. So that's a big growth center, right? I've talked about these parts of the brain a lot, and so I'm not going to do it a lot here. We know the amygdala processes fear and anger. It's a big emotional thing. It's that limbic system that lives under here. Children at this age are still very much run by these, subcortical things. As the PFC, the prefrontal cortex, is coming online to help inhibit those emotions, they are learning, but it's not perfect. So we're going to go further into this in class, but this is just... part of what's happening with brain development as the brain continues to grow. Regulation is a big part of this time of life. Very quickly, handedness, because I don't want to have to go through this big time in class. By age 2, we see dominance being evident of right or left hand. There tends to be this difference equals deficit error. We will see some people, when a child is showing to be left-handed, try still in our day and age to flip them to right-handed because we have a right-handed world. We talked about this a while back, that it was believed that the right side of the body was dominant or preferred, and so the left side to be left-handed. For a long time, there was something wrong with it. Now I think we've just built this right-handed world, and parents think it's going to be hard for left-handed children. So doorknobs and sports things and everything is built for the right. Scissors for kids. Customs favor the right hand. So, but it's not necessarily good for their growing brain and the lateralization of that to try to switch it. And we do see a thicker corpus callosum, which is the thing we're going to talk more about it, but runs down the middle of the brain in left-handed people. I think a lot of this is because that's the part that integrates these two sides of the brain. And for left-handed children, they have to do a lot more integrating and work on that because they're trying to figure out a right-handed world and how to fit into that. So, all right, that is it for this. Yes, it did go to almost 15 minutes. Watch it or not. You might find an inkling or two that's interesting to you. So watch it. Bring one question to class if you have it, 1 or 2 questions, and I'll be happy to do a little more discussion on what is concerning, questioning, interesting. See ya.